Meet Willem. He saved the world once, then spent 5 centuries as a human popsicle until someone finally decided to defrost him. After thawing out, he realizes he is the very last human left alive. Lucky him. With nothing better to do, he takes a job killing monsters to save the world. Again. This is the tragic mess known as Shuumatsu. It all kicks off on Green Island, with Willem trying his best to blend into a crowd of literal monsters. He's walking on eggshells because, honestly, drawing a crowd sounds like a nightmare. But then, he spots something actually interesting for once. Some girl is frantically chasing a cat that definitely stole something she actually needs. She trips like a total klutz, and Willem lunges forward to catch her before she eats the pavement. Truly heroic stuff. Naturally, the sound of them crashing together makes everyone stop and stare. The locals creep closer. Once they realize a stinky human caused the scene, the vibes go from curious to get out real fast. Under all those judgmental glares, Chtholly feels the heat and figures it's time to make a break for it. Willem stops her though, casually handing back the loot the cat swiped. He shocks the crowd by ditching his own hood and tossing it over her head to hide her from the haters. He doesn't even wait for a thank you. He just grabs her arm and drags her away from the angry mob. Later, he buys her a hat so she can stay incognito, since demi-humans aren't exactly winning any popularity contests here. He figures she's a liability and offers to drop her off at the harbor so she can leave. She shoots that down, explaining she's actually headed somewhere else. Willem shrugs and decides to play tour guide. So they start wandering through the city streets together. It's a regular day out for the last man on Earth. He shows her the local sights, which leads to a mix of genuine fun and some expected low-level chaos. Eventually, Chtholly ends up at the top of the central tower, looking at the view like she's in a movie. She admits she's traveled a ton, but she's never actually felt this happy before, which is kind of sad. She's practically glowing with all that joy. Then, she gives Willem a real thank you for the decent day. But the guards are closing in, and she realizes her time is officially up. She asks for one final, weird favor. She wants him to forget they ever met, because this isn't some happily ever after story. She vanishes, leaving Willem standing there like a confused idiot. He figures he shouldn't meddle in business that isn't his anyway. Fast forward a few hours, and Willem is hitting the bar with his buddy Grick. Grick gives him the get-a-life speech, telling him he can't just mope around forever acting like he's already dead. Grick mentions a job opening at some remote spot where nobody cares that he's a boring human, and the paycheck is actually worth the effort. Willem shuts it down immediately. Working sounds like way too much effort. This annoys Grick, who keeps nagging him about how pathetic his current lifestyle is. Willem finally folds under the pressure, but warns he won't do any executioner work or anything remotely shady. Grick Pinky promises it's a cakewalk and says he'll put in a good word. A few hours later, Willem touches down at the floating island where this mysterious warehouse sits. The vibe is sketchy. There are wolves howling, and he knows being an unmarked human here is a death wish. Basically, his life is about to suck. The bridge to the place looks like it's held together by thoughts and prayers. To make things worse, some girl jumps out of nowhere and tries to take his head off. He dodges the attacks and realizes she's about to faceplant into a swamp, so he steps in to save her from a muddy fate. He still takes a solid punch to the gut for his trouble. Then he hears a familiar voice. Chtholly asks what he's doing there. Seeing her in this dump leaves him totally floored. He has questions, but first he needs to wash off the swamp. He's caked in mud. After a shower, he opens the door and sees someone he definitely didn't expect. It's Niglatho, a troll he's known since he was a brat. Small world. He had no clue she was squatting here. Nig is basically ecstatic that Willem is the one showing up to babysit her. He just assumes this is another one of Grick's annoying schemes. The troll gives him the grand tour, explaining that the army and the merchants basically run this rock. She offers him a snack, but Willem is hesitant, mostly because he remembers trolls usually like eating humans for breakfast. She promises to behave since he's a rare vintage human and one of the last ones left. She asks if he's actually staying, noting that previous guards usually quit or die pretty fast in this dump. Willem admits he's not thrilled to see her, but he's not a quitter. Willem asks if this house is really the weapons warehouse he's supposed to be guarding. He already took the gig, so he's sticking it out. Nig is hyped because now she gets to boss him around just like the old days. He's looking for guns or bombs, but the place is suspiciously empty of anything that goes boom. Nig just tells him to chill and says they'll talk about it later. She kicks a door open and 4 little girls tumble out. They were clearly eavesdropping like little creeps. Nig barks at them to get back to their rooms, and they scatter like cockroaches. Then she finally shows Willem where he'll be sleeping. It doesn't take long for things to get noisy outside again. Willem opens his door and there are the tiny spies again, looking curious. He tells them to keep it down so Nig doesn't come back and kill the mood. They introduce themselves and start firing off questions like a rapid-fire machine gun. Willem explains how he knows Nig and tells them he's the new guy on the payroll. He's the boss now. Suddenly, Chtholly shows up and starts scolding them for being total nuisances to the new guest. A core memory from 500 years ago hits him. The kids realize the fun is over and bolt back to their rooms. He was having a normal dinner at his old orphanage, just a regular day before the end. Chtholly apologizes for the chaos, but Willem says he's used to annoying kids. He thanks her for the hot water so he doesn't die of a cold. He knew he was heading off to the final war the very next morning. One of the girls there begged him to give her a reason to believe he'd actually come home. She gets all shy and finally tells him her name, since she forgot that part back in the city. Willem promised he'd be back so they could have another family dinner together. She gave him a big smile and said she'd be waiting right there for him. He can tell she's hiding a question, so he stops her. He's got his own confusion to deal with first. Fast forward a year and humanity was wiped off the map. He definitely didn't make it back for dinner. He mentions he was hired to guard weapons, but this place looks more like a daycare than an armory. Back in the present, he's watching a cafeteria full of happy kids eating, and he's just completely stunned. Plus, why are there a dozen kids in a top-secret military base? The idea that these cheerful little things are actually weapons of war is just impossible for him to swallow. Well, Chtholly is shocked. He actually took the job without knowing what was really going on. Nig does the introductions, and Willem tries to be a normal guy and greets the group. She drops the bomb, those weapons he's supposed to guard. They're the girls living in this house. He's caught off guard when one girl looks at him like he's a literal monster. Apparently men are scary. She tells him to wrap his head around that and try to be helpful, then suggests he gets some sleep. Over the next few days, he tries to be the cool uncle, helping out and chatting, but the kids treat him like a ticking bomb. Willem is staring at the ceiling, wondering how these tiny girls could possibly be military hardware. He gets nothing but shaky hands and nervous side eyes. He's silently offended that his mere existence is enough to terrify a whole room of children. He corners Nig and Chtholly, and they explain that these kids have literally never seen a man before. He's basically an alien to them. Before he can process his alien status, 2 other girls walk up to him. They point out that only Chtholly seems to be handling his presence without having a meltdown. This clearly hits a nerve with Chtholly, while Willem tries to play it cool by saying he's a pro at handling kids. He gets a bright idea and spends a few hours whipping up some homemade caramel. Nephron and Chtholly try it and lose their minds. Since the trial run was a hit, he goes into full Gordon Ramsay mode and makes a massive mountain of snacks. The girls swarm the table like piranhas, tasting everything and wiping the plates clean in record time. They are absolutely loving it. He watches them with a smirk, but deep down, he's drowning in old memories he'd rather forget. Nig snaps him out of it, and he admits he was just daydreaming about the past. He swears to himself he won't screw up this time. Then, a mob of sugar-crazed girls tackles him to the floor. They're demanding he gets back in the kitchen and makes more treats immediately. That night, he thanks Chtholly for all her help, but he can see she's got something heavy on her mind. The next day, Willem just watches the kids playing and laughing like normal human beings for once. Up in her room, Chtholly is spying on them too. Her friends start teasing her, basically calling her out for being jealous of Willem's new fan club of little girls. Nig jokes that she's probably just obsessed with that hat he gave her, and Chtholly turns bright red and denies everything. She's a terrible liar. Ithia reminds them that they only have 10 days left until the big day, noting that fairies rarely live this long anyway. Chtholly's deep in thought. Meanwhile, Willem's watching the kids play until one girl decides to take a spectacular header down a steep slope. He rushes over, panicking, and asks if she's still in one piece. The kid has a bloody knee but just stands up grinning, acting like it was all part of the plan. He tells her to sit her butt down. He's horrified because the other kids are just cheering for her bravery instead of calling a medic. Fast forward. Back at the infirmary, Willem tells Nig it's super creepy how these girls treat their own lives like expired milk. He demands to know what kind of messed up secret they're hiding. Nig isn't exactly jumping to spill the beans. She admits she'd rather keep him in the dark since he's been treating them like real people and not just tools. She's worried that if he knows the truth, he'll start acting like a total jerk. Willem won't let it go, so they head down to the basement for the birds and the bees talk, but with more death. Nig explains that 500 years ago, 17 beasts wiped out everyone on Earth, including the humans, which explains Willem's empty friend list. Most people are still terrified of them, she says, as she unlocks a very heavy door. Willem immediately recognizes the rusty junk inside. They're the legendary weapons human heroes used to carry. Nig calls them excavated weapons now. Apparently they're the only things that can kill beasts, but since humans are gone, they need a new pilot. That's where the girls come in. They're called fairies, and they basically cosplay as humans well enough to trick the swords into working. She chokes up and walks away without saying a single word. Very dramatic. They can swing these heavy blades because they don't value staying alive, making them the perfect suicide soldiers. Willem looks like he's seen a ghost, realizing these sweet girls are just living batteries for these cursed ancient relics. The next day, he's walking around like a zombie, totally disturbed. He can't find Chtholly or Ithia anywhere. Nephron tells him they've been sent out on a mission for a few days. His internal bad feeling, alarm starts screaming. While he waits, he mulls over how dangerous these weapons are. They literally eat the user's life force just to stay powered up. Fairies who don't give a damn about living actually make the weapons more powerful. It's a dark trade. But that much power can cause a massive explosion that levels everything in sight. He's finally relieved when he sees the two of them dragging themselves back home. He greets Ithia, who acts surprised he's even there but says she's fine and dandy. Poor Chtholly, however, is completely wiped out. He takes their swords and helps them stumble back to the house. Ithia is shocked that he knows the actual names of their swords without being told. He tells her he's an old pro with these things and knows exactly how they tick. Ithia just begs him not to treat them like fragile glass, because dying for the world is literally their job description. Even if they are disposable tools, Willem says he once knew someone exactly like them, and because of an old promise, he's not letting them face this nightmare alone. A bit later on, Chtholly wakes up in a cold sweat, freaking out because he's sitting right there by her bed. He tells her to chill out and sleep because she's burning up with a fever and he's her official babysitter now. She finally finds her voice and asks if he'll grant her one last wish. She's convinced she's kicking the bucket in 5 days. He's stunned and asks why she's being such a pessimist. She explains a beast is coming for a floating island, and this one is a rare, flying freak of nature. It's learned how to use air currents to move fast, making it a total nightmare to hit. It's a suicide mission. The only way to kill it is for her to overload her sword and die with it. So she asks for a kiss as her final request. Smooth. Willem gives her a reality check, telling her to stop planning her own funeral and actually start caring about living. She just mopes that she wants someone to actually miss her when she's gone. He kisses her forehead instead and explains that the magical poison from the sword is what's actually making her feel like death. He then gives her a massage until she's out like a light. Holding her blade, he thinks back to his old war buddy from the past. She promised to be the ultimate hero and save everyone, but look how that turned out. He swears he won't let history repeat itself with these kids. Later that night, he hits the library and is actually impressed by how much paperwork they've managed to pile up. Nig creeps up with a drink and asks what he's really plotting in the dark. He says he's just doing some light reading and organizing the mess while he's at it. Nig decides to play librarian and help him out, which he actually appreciates. The two of them spend the night cleaning up the records. In the morning, Chtholly wakes up, remembers the forehead kiss, and probably wants to die of embarrassment. Some other girls burst in to check on her, since she usually looks like she's been through a blender after a fight. She remembers the pain, but strangely, she feels like she just spent a week at a spa. She asks the peanut gallery if they've seen the human guy lately. They tell her he's hanging out in the warehouse with Nig. That makes her suspicious. So she goes to investigate what kind of trouble they're stirring up. Willem spots her and says hi like he didn't just spend the night with a troll. Exactly what he thinks he's doing. He tells her he's looking for a way to use the swords without them being a one-way ticket to the cemetery. But she's not having it. She argues that fighting and dying is their whole point in life, and she doesn't need his pity. Willem asks her to back off for a second, but within a minute they're both armed and ready to go. She's confused until he challenges her to a duel, claiming that maybe humans aren't the only ones who can actually use these things correctly. He even talks a little trash, saying he can fight circles around her. That pisses her off, so she lights up her sword and charges him like a bull. But before she can blink, she's tasting dirt. She scrambles back up to try again. And he just tosses her aside like a doll. She's totally stunned and has no idea how he's doing it. He explains that these swords are built to absorb the enemy's energy and spit it back at the right moment. Basically, you don't have to blow yourself up to win a fight if you actually use your brain. She doesn't want to believe her people have been doing it wrong for centuries. She tries one more angry swing. Willem shuts her down again, telling her she sucks with a sword because she's all rage and no strategy. That makes you a liability, he tells her. With one perfect move, he puts her back on the ground for the final time. He does give her a compliment though, saying she's got the guts and power to be a legend if she'd just let him train her. She's so exhausted she just collapses, and even Nig looks worried because Willem is starting to cough up blood. Meanwhile, Nig gets on a call with the general to confirm the upcoming slaughter. In 3 days, 3 fairies go to the island, and one of them is going through a portal to die for the cause. The general says sounds good and hangs up like they're ordering pizza. Nig starts crying because it's totally unfair that these girls have to die before they've even had a chance to live a little. Suddenly, the kids come running in screaming that there's an actual emergency this time. Willem is currently knocking on death's door. He's having a flashback to his fight with the god, Eben. He was mangled, and Eben actually respected him enough to say he'd be back in 1,000 years to finish the job. The god joked that Willem wouldn't be around to see it because humans have the shelf life of a banana. The god then explodes, and Willem, feeling his life slip away, apologizes to his friends for failing his promise to come back in one piece. And then he finally snaps awake. Nig is right there, figuring he just had a very spicy nightmare. She asks him what the hell he was thinking. His organs are basically mush and his muscles are shot, but he just looks at his scars and says they're just old souvenirs. He claims it's no big deal. Nig notices the kids are spying again and tells Willem to get some actual sleep. Later, Nig tells a young girl the story of how they found the human popsicle. They found him in a frozen lake on the surface, looking like a human-shaped rock in the middle of the ice. After some tests, they figured out he was hit with a petrification curse that lasted centuries. It was a pain to wake him up because he was a broken, confused mess, but they finally got him talking. They realized he was the very last of his kind, since humans haven't been a thing for 500 years. He tells the kids they don't have to be scared of him. They immediately swarm him with questions about how he survived and why he looks like a giant version of them. Nig has to play the heavy and kick the kids out so he can actually heal. That's when Chtholly walks in with her friends. Chtholly demands to know. One of them asks why he even bothers caring about girls who are literally born to die. He tells her straight up he doesn't want to see kids like them getting buried. But Chtholly can't handle the truth and storms out of the room. She takes off into the sky, crying her eyes out while she flies through the clouds. She thinks about how hard she worked to accept that she was just a tool. Just like all the sisters she's lost before. She loses her focus and ends up crash landing on a nearby army ship. She thanks the general for the assist and mentions that Willem is teaching her how to actually fight properly. The general is shocked, realizing they've basically been teaching suicide instead of combat this whole time. Then, Chtholly finally admits that she's terrified of dying. The general doesn't judge her. He says fear is normal for anyone who isn't a psychopath. He tells her that true determination, the wind, only shows up when you're standing at the edge of the abyss. Chtholly didn't quite catch the vibe of that speech, but she confessed that becoming a warrior was never on her bucket list. The general just had a good laugh at her honesty. A while later, she finally made it back to the island. Willem was already there, busy doing maintenance on the sword. She walked up and asked why he was being so meticulous. She watched in awe as a shimmering dome formed, and tiny lights started dancing toward the blade shards. He explained that these aren't just blades, they're talismans packed with old wishes and spells that, when tuned right, turn into a massive power source. Chtholly was floored. She mentioned the general actually gave her the green light to do whatever she wanted until the day the fighting starts. Turns out the destiny of everyone on that list could actually be rewritten. She looked at him and asked if she really could get stronger. He gave her a nod, promising she would, even if she didn't feel like putting in the effort. He also swore that if she came back from the mission after slaying the beast, he'd grant her any wish she could think of. The offer totally stunned her into silence. After mulling it over, she went with something surprisingly modest. A butter cake, she said, recalling how an older sister always treated herself to one after a mission. Problem was, none of them actually knew how to bake it. Willem immediately got a flash of his old friend Elmira. She was a cake fanatic too, so he promised Chtholly a fresh batch the moment she returned. A few days later, the girls were packed up and heading for the island. Willem told Grick that he's always been absolutely terrible at saying goodbye. He distracted himself by shopping for all the baking supplies he'd need for that homecoming cake. 2 weeks crawled by. He was pacing around Nig, losing his mind over the total radio silence. The anxiety was killing him. Nig told him to quit pacing and help her with some chores to get his mind off the war. He figured, why not? While he was on the roof patching a leak, he realized the whole place was eerily quiet. He started hunting for the girl, but when he couldn't find her anywhere, he started to spiral into a full-blown panic. Nig appeared with a look of pure stone, telling him to stop looking because the girls went to war and didn't make it back. Willem snapped his eyes open, gasping for air and realizing it was just a twisted nightmare. Thank God for that. He pointed toward Tite, signaling the direction they needed to go. As they hiked across the island, he was getting pretty annoyed with Nig since the trek had already eaten up a whole day. Then he remembered his aunt's weird warning. She mentioned that Tite had a dream about wandering a strange island and chatting with a total stranger. Fairies call those precursor dreams, and it's basically a one-way ticket to the general hospital. As they walked, Willem told his aunt he wanted to take a detour. He had a specific spot he wanted to check out first. Since they weren't exactly in a race to get to the hospital, she agreed. They spent a while just drifting through the side streets without any real plan. It was almost peaceful for once. Tite started geeking out, recognizing famous landmarks from a bunch of old movies she'd obsessed over. She was basically a walking encyclopedia, explaining the backstory of every single corner. Willem wasn't exactly feeling it, though, since those movies only featured demi-humans, and that wasn't really his scene. Still, he surprised his aunt by stopping to buy a little souvenir at one of the local shops. Tite got even more hyper and pointed out the statue of the great sage. Supposedly, if a couple makes a vow in front of the city's founder, they get a lifetime of happiness, or so the legend says. He stared at the statue's face, feeling like there was something familiar or just plain weird about it. Suddenly, the peace was shattered by screaming as a mob of demi-humans started trashing a nearby building. The golem security system kicked in immediately, chasing the troublemakers through the streets. Willem grabbed Tite to keep her safe, but ended up tripping right over one of the rioters. The guy got busted, and Willem told Tite to head straight for the hospital while he dealt with the mess. She was totally fine with that, having already seen enough of the city for one day. When they arrived, the doctor was chill and led Tite to the ward. Willem gave her a pep talk, promising more sightseeing the next day. Once the kid was gone, the doctor turned his attention to Willem. He admitted he's studied fairies for years, but never saw a human get along with them so naturally. It was a first. Willem mentioned Nig was tied up and asked what the actual plan was for these girls. The doctor dropped a truth bomb. Not every fairy is actually cut out to swing a legendary sword. Those precursor dreams are a red flag that they might be glitching out. The tests were to see if her body could handle the adjustment, which is basically a fancy way of saying maturing into a weapon. The doctor told Willem to come along, promising the checkup wouldn't take more than a few minutes. He insisted that most of the girls come out of it perfectly fine, but occasionally they catch a rare bug that starts messing with their heads and behavior. In the ward, he confirmed Tite's results were solid, but she'd have to stay until noon to finish the sync process. Willem told her not to sweat it and promised he'd be right back to pick her up when she was done. As he watched her go, he couldn't help but feel a bit sorry for her. Tite always wanted to be an adult, but she probably didn't realize that meant becoming a biological war machine. Later, he checked into an inn and found out his army rank got him a room that was way too fancy for him. He tried asking around about the skirmish on Island 15, but nobody seemed to know anything. Typical. He tried to get some shut-eye, but sleep was definitely not interested in visiting him that night. He woke up feeling like garbage and saw the rain pouring down, which totally trashed his plans for a day out with Tite. He went for a walk anyway and bumped into a girl who was starstruck by him. She asked if he could get a message to General Limeskin. Willem remembered the giant lizard and told her it was a no-go since the general was busy in the field. Plus, he had a communication jammer up, so he was off the grid. While they chatted, he caught some officers gossiping about the mess on Island 15. He didn't waste a second. He vaulted into the garden, grabbed a soldier and demanded the full story, playing the "I'm the officer in charge" card. The soldier was shaking and admitted the report said the island's defense was a total disaster. The news hit him like a freight train. He immediately pictured Chtholly and the others, and he just couldn't wrap his head around the idea of them being gone. While he was spiraling, he spotted someone walking into the barracks. It was General Limeskin himself. Willem took off running toward him. Suddenly, a voice he knew all too well made him spin around. It was Ithia, standing there with Nephron and Chtholly. All alive. He couldn't believe his luck and just launched himself at them, giving them the tightest hug ever. The girls were totally weirded out. Chtholly started complaining that he was actually crushing her ribs. Limeskin joked that he didn't even see Willem coming, must be some ancient ninja art or something. Ithia teased him, saying she didn't realize he was such a big softie, while she and Nephron tried to pry him off. Chtholly, they all assured him they were still in one piece. He finally took a breath, feeling like he'd dodged a bullet until Chtholly got so embarrassed by the affection that she just slapped him across the face. Just a few hours ago, those girls were out there fighting for their lives on Island 15. Chtholly, using everything Willem taught her, was a total beast on the field, outshining everyone else. They took down a big one and were ready to call it a day, but then a new freak of nature crawled out of the carcass. It was something no one had ever seen. It fired a laser beam that turned a bunch of soldiers into dust, so Limeskin called for a total retreat. But Chtholly wasn't about to run away with enemies still standing. She wasn't ready to take the L. As she closed in, her brain started glitching with weird voices and images that didn't make any sense. After hours of playing cat and mouse, they finally fell back and gave Willem the full report. The general actually thanked him, saying the swords were way more effective thanks to his tune-up. Chtholly, on the other hand, was beating herself up for not pulling a suicide move to save the island. But Nephron set her straight. Even if she'd blown herself up, it wouldn't have scratched that monster. They just needed to get better and evolve so they wouldn't lose next time. Right then, Pierre showed up, calling out for Uncle Limeskin and looking pretty desperate. The girl was frantic, saying her dad got a letter telling him he's dead if he doesn't shut down the academy. It caught everyone off guard, but she kept begging for help, explaining that someone threatened to kill him if he didn't cancel the big ceremony. Her dad is the mayor, so he's got way too much on his plate to deal with death threats on his own. Limeskin said his hands were tied, but asked Willem if he could play bodyguard for a bit. He turned it down immediately. He's already got enough girls to worry about, and he had to go pick up Tite from her checkup. As he walked away, Pierre started tailing him like a shadow. She explained that her dad was planning to announce a new policy that finally accepts all races in the city. Naturally, there's a group of haters who hate the unmarked and have been kidnapping kids and causing chaos to stop it. Willem basically just shrugs and says sorry, knowing the army only gets involved when monsters are knocking on the front door. He can't touch local drama, and that's the same excuse Limeskin uses to stay out of it. It's a not my problem kind of vibe. This leaves Pierre totally crushed, basically begging any random person for a helping hand. A few minutes later, they hit the hospital where the other girls swarm Tite with a bunch of suffocating hugs. She claims she wasn't crying because of the needles, then side-eyes Willem and asks if he's being a total jerk to poor Pierre. Since the girl has zero friends, he points out he can't fix everyone's life and suggests they just go grab some street food instead. But Pierre isn't having any cheap snacks and demands he takes them to the absolute best food stall in the city. Before long, the whole squad is face-deep in some actually decent lamb. While they're stuffing their faces, Pierre brags that this place isn't just for eating, it's a total movie set for famous films. Tite is a total fangirl and starts geeking out with her. Willem is actually impressed, noticing how Pierre talks about every tiny brick in the city with a weirdly genuine spark. Later, they hit a tourist trap where Pierre is chatting up Chtholly. Meanwhile, Willem is busy staring at a bunch of performers dressed as clowns. Suddenly, he gets a bad trip of old memories that gives him a nasty premonition about what's coming for those circus rejects. Chtholly gets the spooks, so he tries to play it cool while they keep wandering around the area. He asks if there's a local hotspot that isn't currently swamped with annoying crowds. Pierre gives a nod and leads the way to the local wishing well. While they're swapping stories, he realizes they've been boxed in by a pack of werewolves. Pierre loses it when the head dog introduces them as the Knights of Annihilation, and they're definitely not mere fans. They're here to take over and kick any unmarked losers out of their city for good. The mob starts their move, but Willem just points his finger like a gun, and somehow, the bad guys start dropping like flies. After sniping the guy on the roof, he tells the leader he smelled the trap a mile away and tells Pierre he used her as bait. Sorry, not sorry. The real guards show up right on time to drag the gang off to jail. Pierre is happy to be alive, but she's not a fan of Willem's shady tactics and apologizes to the girls. She says her goodbyes and hopes they don't die anytime soon. Willem keeps walking with Chtholly, mulling over Pierre's weirdly intense city pride. But Chtholly cuts him off, revealing she saw right through his little finger gun magic trick. He was actually flicking coins at insane speeds. She only noticed because she's been training with him and knows his moves. She calls him out for actually liking the fight and begs him to stop being a hero because she's the one supposed to protect him. He admits that when he first woke up, life felt like a bad joke because everyone he loved was already dust. But being with them makes him feel human again, which makes Chtholly turn into a blushing mess and walk away in a huff. She's clearly into him. He catches up at the port, where an officer named Heroine shows up with a mysterious invite to a meeting. He's about to say no until he hears the name Saukangal. He freezes and asks the officer to babysit the girls while he goes to investigate. Heroine agrees, but Chtholly is clinging to him, and he has to promise he'll be back. Chtholly is tearing up, holding him to that specific promise. Willem gets a painful flashback to Almeria and says his goodbyes with a heavy heart. Later, we meet a very grumpy old man who thinks someone is messing with his stash of ancient weapons. Willem walks in like he owns the place. The old guy Sao recognizes him as the Black Swordsman and gives him a giant hug, wondering how he's not a skeleton. Willem just laughs and tells him he's looking a little rough these days. He explains the whole frozen for 5 centuries thing, which makes sense why Sao's magic couldn't find him. Sao admits he actually died too, but used a curse to stay in the game. He's not exactly human anymore, but he's just glad he didn't go out like a boring old man in a hospital bed. They talk about Lilia's death and the good old days when they used to roast each other on missions and laugh until it hurt. Sao realizes Willem is the only guy qualified to actually run the warehouse. Willem wants to get back to his girls, but Sao insists they visit someone first. Someone who definitely won't be happy to see them. He orders a ship to head straight for island number 2. Meanwhile, Chtholly is having another mental breakdown, seeing weird sounds and images that make zero sense, waking up in a cold sweat. Her eyes are starting to look seriously creepy. Back on the island, Willem is following Sao to meet someone, but all he sees is a giant, talking skull with way too much energy. The skull is complaining about its lack of visitors, and Willem starts wondering if he's just stuck in a really weird nightmare. Sao notes the shock on Willem's face, and the skull asks how he's even standing there, since Willem already killed him back when he still had skin and bones. Eben explains that the last attack basically evaporated his body. His flesh got nuked, but he woke up as a talking skull. Talk about a bad morning. He doesn't get a break though, since he's constantly using his mojo to keep the world from falling apart. Willem asks about those 17 beasts everyone keeps talking about. Sao reveals they were actually biological experiments made by humans. Way to go, guys. They were part of the True World group they fought ages ago. But everything went south because of the insane power level of their battle. They had to rip the islands away from the surface just to keep a few people alive. Now that Willem's back, Sao thinks they can finally take back the surface. He's the missing ingredient. The old weapons are junk now, but if they refine them, they can mass-produce fairies to kamikaze the beasts and win the world back. Willem looks at them in disgust, wondering if they're really the ones putting the girls through this hell. Meanwhile, Chtholly is flashing back to her own battle. As the visions start flooding in, she tries to keep her head in the game. But the beast strikes. She taps into her inner power and nukes the monster, remembering Willem's promise to make her stronger. She hits the thing so hard it probably felt it in the next life, but it splits the whole island in the process. She passes out just as her friends reach her. It's a total mess. Sao explains to Willem that fairies are just the wandering souls of dead children. He used magic to give them bodies, making them the perfect soldiers because they have zero survival instinct. The catch is, as the weapon poison builds up, they start remembering their past lives and go totally insane. But apparently that's the only way to kill a beast. Great system. Meanwhile, Chtholly is trying to eat with her friends, but she's being unusually quiet. She excuses herself, saying she just needs a bit more beauty sleep. Back in her room, the voices and visions are back for another round. She's begging for a mute button on her own brain, sobbing because she's afraid she won't live long enough to taste that butter cake. Then her mind snaps and she wakes up in a different body. Freaky. Willem lays into Sao, telling him he can't just treat the girls like they're disposable garbage. The magician just shrugs and says it's the only way to get back to the surface. Willem points out that there's nothing left for them there anyway. No home, no family, why bother? Sao is actually surprised. Eben tells them to get out. He knows Willem has already made up his mind to prioritize Chtholly over the rest of the world. Willem has officially picked a side, and it's not the Save Humanity one. Byrone bursts in, revealing that Chtholly's memories are flooding back, and her brain is basically melting. In a heartbeat, Willem is already racing back to the island. Eben asks Sao if he told Willem the whole truth about the beast experiments. The old guy admits he treats Willem like a brother and didn't want Chtholly to hate him for the truth. He's keeping secrets. Willem finds Chtholly in her room a few hours later, looking rough. Nig tells him he better keep that promise, and Willem feels like a total failure for not making her happy yet. But Chtholly is currently tripping in some weird dream dimension. She follows a mysterious girl through some trippy landscapes until the girl introduces herself. Chtholly can't remember her own name, but the image of Willem brings her back. She says she has to go back. It's going to hurt like hell, but she's made her choice. Willem says his goodbyes in the real world, hoping she wakes up soon. He talks to Nig, still trying to wrap his head around what Chtholly is going through. But he knows one thing. He has to make her smile, even if it kills him. Then Chtholly finally starts talking to him, admitting she couldn't help falling for the guy who showed her that the world isn't just a grey, dying rock. He was actually the first guy to ever hand her an L, and Willem was visibly shook to see her standing there breathing. Nig gives him a solid shove forward, so he finally hugs Chtholly and gives her a proper, welcome back to the living greeting. She starts leaking tears, clearly relieved that he actually stuck around. They both just have a moment and let all that drama out. Ithia whispers that this is basically a straight-up miracle, totally clueless about the heavy price Chtholly paid for her return trip. The next day, while watching Willem train the squad, Chtholly spots a red streak in his hair and looks like she's trying to solve a math problem. Over on the ship, Rantolk is busy reading up on the history of humans and monsters. Noft asks how she even reads that gibberish, and she explains she can vibes check certain words to piece together the general meaning of human talk. Grick decides to crash their little study session. Then, Chtholly ducks out, and Tiet gets all hyped because she can feel something weird clicking in her brain since the big change. Willem walks in looking like he won the lottery once she leaves, making all the other girls start snooping for details. Nig tells them to go scrub their hands before dinner, and Willem checks in with Chtholly on the plan. He's being a bit of a hover parent. He tells her they're doing a health check before they meet up again in a couple of hours. Grick notices the fairies still treat him like a suspicious stranger, so he tries to win them over with some military-grade snacks. Rantolk shrugs and lets him tag along since they don't exactly have other options for company. They start debating where monsters actually come from and why they had such a massive hate boner for the human race. To everyone else, they're just nightmares, but to the fairies, those freaks are literally the only reason they were even born. Back in the doctor's office, Nig starts poking and prodding at Chtholly. It's checkup time. After a few blood draws, the girl asks if she's actually dying or if everything is just fine. Nig stalls for time, not knowing how to explain that while it might not be lethal yet, things are definitely getting weird. Meanwhile, Willem is playing Baker's assistant for one of the girls to get some supplies ready. The kid starts talking about how he's basically her dad and Chtholly is her mom, which is way too much drama. He tells her to go run back to the group so he can actually focus on the dough without a headache. Nig finally drops the news on Chtholly. Her silver test came back as a big fat 0, which is pretty impossible. Usually, if you drop fairy blood on silver, it looks like a middle school science project gone wrong. The silver is supposed to turn black instantly, but her blood is acting like it's just boring old water. This is a first for the history books. But Chtholly says she feels totally normal and wonders if it's just because of her new edgy red hair highlights. Nig tells her that, for the time being, he's just going to keep an eye on her and orders her to stay away from the big swords so she doesn't break. Plus, he gives her a little nudge. She needs to convince Willem to stick around since his contract is up, and she's clearly caught the feels for him. He even suggests she should trick him into thinking this dump is a home and not just a shitty warehouse job. A few hours later, Willem's brother notices that the whole squad is in a surprisingly good mood. They're all busy inhaling the cake he just baked, but he realizes Chtholly is nowhere to be seen. She's missing from the party. The girls mention she's too refined to eat sugar like a barbarian in front of everyone. So Willem plays waiter and brings a private slice of cake up to Chtholly's room. She loses it. It's like she's seeing a miracle. She finally digs into the one thing she's been dreaming about for days, trying her best not to look like a total mess. But she ends up sobbing while eating anyway. She actually kept her word and made it back to the home base. Willem pulls her in for a hug, telling her to take a breath because the scary stuff is over for now. Then, Chtholly wakes up the next day feeling like a brand new person. She's got a massive to-do list for her day off, but Willem just tells her to not go overboard and yell if her brain starts acting up again. For the next couple of days, Chtholly turns into a domestic goddess, taking care of the kids and cleaning the whole house top to bottom. She's doing the housewife thing, which is a weirdly peaceful change from her usual child soldier routine. Having Willem there supporting her makes the chores feel like a vacation, as she's basically living the quiet life she always wanted with him. Meanwhile, Willem goes to meet up with Limeskin. The guy is in his pajamas because he's under investigation for that massive L he took on the last mission. He's not even allowed to put on his fancy uniform right now. Nig mentions she's talking to the brass about what to do with Chtholly, since she's technically army property and they don't usually let their nukes just quit to go bake cakes. Willem asks if Saukangal actually has any pull with the higher-ups, which catches Limeskin off guard. Turns out Sau is basically the prime minister of the military, so Willem says he's got this whole thing handled. He's just going to write a letter himself, telling Sau that Chtholly is now a part of his own private science project. Sau will definitely say yes to that. Nig is shook that he's on a first-name basis with the big boss, but Willem is more worried about Nephron because she can't solo a mission by herself. Nig points out he's out of the loop and mentions there are 2 other fairies currently out on the surface doing some digging. They've been getting hit with attacks though, so the reports are looking pretty grim. Right as they're talking, a monster decides to crash the party at the surface research site. Grick is panicking as the monster starts chewing on their ship, but Noft shows off and deletes the creature in about 5 seconds. She's actually disappointed because the fight was too easy for her. A few hours later, Nig tells Willem he's being called to Island 49 for a likely save-their-butts mission. Chtholly, on the other hand, is having a brain fart and can't even remember where she put the pepper. With Grick still stuck on the surface, headquarters is promising to send some backup eventually. They're told to just sit tight because monsters usually hate sharing snacks and won't show up in a massive group. Rantolk is still stuck in her books, overthinking everything she read about humans. Willem goes to see the boss, Godly, who tells him he's heading out to rescue the 2 girls from the surface. The good ship is in the shop, so he's got to wait for the budget version. The mission is basically a loot run for surface junk, and they're using the girls as glorified monster repellent, even if it kills them. Willem hates the sound of that, but he bites his tongue because Chtholly is technically the one signing his checks. Chtholly tosses him a book about the surface ruins and tells him to hit the books so he doesn't get lost out there. Willem takes one look at the book and his heart stops. He recognizes the map and the photos immediately. It's a picture of his own hometown. One of the weapons they're hunting for is bringing back a tidal wave of bad memories. Before he signs up, he asks Chtholly to do him one quick solid. A few minutes later, he meets Chtholly in the public square. She asks how the meeting went, and he says he got a bunch of info and everything is basically smoothed over now. Then he asks her what her plan is for the day. Chtholly says she's got a grocery list a mile long and wants him to come along for a little date, since they never actually got to hang out in the city without something exploding. Willem points out that's a lie because they did exactly that when they first met, which surprises Chtholly because she's totally forgotten that part of her life. As they walk, Willem can see the lights are on but nobody's home in her eyes. He realizes she's leaking memories like a sieve. After a few hours of shopping, they sit down for a breather. The shopkeepers are already whispering about them being a cute couple. Willem reveals he's heading to the surface for a rescue, and he's taking Nephron with him because he's not waiting for permission. He's also hunting for a legendary sword called Lapidem, which apparently keeps the user in tip-top shape no matter what. He wants it bad because it might be the only way to stop her brain from turning into mush. She tells him to quit worrying so much and says she's coming along for the ride. He tells her no way because she's not an adult or a trained soldier, just a kid who needs to stay put. But Chtholly isn't taking no for an answer, and a few minutes later, they're both leaving the base together. He tries to explain that she only got through because Chtholly thinks she's his assistant, which is basically code for +1 in the military. The next day brings a whole new set of problems. Ithia wakes him up for breakfast and finds him. He passed out right on top of Nephron while they were both researching that ancient sword. The two of them confirm the good news. The sword is definitely a cure for her memory loss if they can find it. Chtholly acts all surprised, but she's clearly hooked on the idea of not forgetting her own name. Willem eventually has to explain to her exactly why he was pulling an all-nighter with two other girls in the library. He can smell the jealousy on her from a mile away, which makes things pretty awkward for him. Later on, he goes to talk to Nig. She admits she has no clue why Chtholly is acting so weird, or why her hair is turning into a strawberry blonde disaster. Willem gives her the lowdown on the weird vibes he's been getting from the girl lately. Nig just cracks up, totally oblivious to the fact that Chtholly is actually in love with him. She wants to be his girlfriend, not his kid. Willem is stunned when Nig mentions that she actually trusts him with her own life now. He's so confused, he just pretends he's deaf and walks out of the room. Then he sees some girls sprint toward the exit, which is weird because it's way past their bedtime. Chtholly then mentioned that this was actually a pretty special night. They stepped outside and were greeted by a shower of shooting stars, a view that actually managed to impress Willem for once. Chtholly drifted closer to him, and he took her hand just to let her know he was right there. Just then, they heard the aunts barking orders at some kids, but Chtholly joked that he was basically her nagging older sister and thanked him for the trip to the surface. Suddenly, they heard a girl trip while trying to get a better view of the stars, and Willem was about to use a move to go catch her. But out of nowhere, Chtholly tapped into some hidden power and sprinted like a maniac, reaching the kid first and keeping her from a nasty fall. He ran over to check on them, but Chtholly acted like it was no big deal, even though she couldn't remember the name of the girl she just saved. Willem got heated, telling her she's not herself anymore and warning her to stop using that power before she loses whatever brain cells she has left. But Chtholly just shrugged it off, saying nobody got hurt and that she was going to help the kid clean up the mess. She told everyone to take a chill pill because it was just a tiny accident and nothing worth panicking over. A few minutes later, while they were scrubbing up, Chtholly caught a glimpse of a red-haired stranger staring back at her in the mirror. Memories of her talks with Willem started crashing back in, along with a bunch of trippy images that totally messed with her head. Her hair started looking way redder, and Willem noticed it immediately, getting a flashback to the moose incident that creeped him out. Later that night, Chtholly went for a walk to try and make sense of the mental junk mail she was receiving. That's when Ithia showed up and hit her with a "Who even are you?" Caught off guard, Chtholly just said her name was Chtholly. Ithia stared at her for a second and then nodded. She could tell the girl hadn't completely checked out yet. She told Chtholly to dump those fake memories in the trash and stop obsessing over stuff that isn't hers. She also warned her to stop building up more venom before her brain officially short-circuits. Even though Chtholly argued that she was just acting on instinct, Ithia reminded her that playing hero is a great way to end up in a body bag. Living someone else's life and seeing their memories is a fast track to losing your own mind forever. She told her to leave the ghost stories behind and focus on the person she actually is right now. She needs to think about the people who matter and quit living in some dead girl's past. Paul. Chtholly felt the sting of that reality. Her mind was basically a melting ice cube, even if it was taking its time. Then, Ithia decided to spill the tea on a girl she used to know a long time ago. This girl went through the same memory-melting disaster and got totally swallowed by the visions. One day, she checked out of her own head and woke up as a completely different person. She had zero idea how she got there or whose face she was wearing in the mirror. She didn't even recognize her own hands. Luckily, Ithia could read her mind and figured out who the girl actually was under all that mental static. But the girl felt like a total fraud, stealing the life of someone way more fun and outgoing than her. The guilt was heavy, but she eventually decided to just play the part of Ithia, so nobody would suspect she was a replacement. Chtholly was shook. She never saw that plot twist coming. Ithia told her that's exactly why she needs to keep her guard up. She managed to pull herself back once before, but the next time she might just vanish for good. Luck only goes so far in this business of being a magical weapon. So Chtholly needs to hold on tight to her own life and never forget what she actually wants. The girl felt a spark of hope and decided to live her life with a bit more fire in her soul. Ithia got curious and asked if Chtholly wanted to know more about the person she was before she became a ghost story. But Chtholly said she already knew what was worth remembering and nothing was going to change her mind. She promised to keep it a secret, so Ithia didn't have to worry about the truth getting out. The next day, Chtholly decided to stop moping about the future and actually start enjoying the view while she still could. The whole squad was stunned to see her so bubbly and actually helping out with the chores for once. Ithia knew she had to make every second count and quit wasting time worrying about her expiration date. She even picked up knitting because winter was coming and the kids needed some warm gear to keep from freezing. She spent her time trying to convince her friends that she hadn't completely lost her marbles. Later, Willem went to find Nig to check on a girl who'd caught a nasty cold. Nig said he'd grab some meds later to fix her up. Then Willem showed Chtholly a scrap of metal to tuck under the kid's pillow to help her sleep through the night. For a split second, Chtholly forgot the kid's name and looked at the metal like it was made of pure gold. She couldn't believe he was just carrying around something that valuable. Willem admitted it was just a shard of his own sword, which annoyed Nig, who thought he was treating a weapon of war like a cheap mood ring. But Willem said the kid's health was more important than a piece of pointy junk. He explained the shard had some weird healing vibes and promised to put it back on the blade before they shipped out. He was busy getting the boat ready for departure. To avoid looking at Willem, Chtholly just focused on her knitting, ignoring Nig's jokes about her love life while everyone else stared in confusion. Over the next few days, Chtholly stayed buried in her housework, trying not to think about the fact that her brain was slowly dying. She just wanted to make people smile and enjoy the ride while the wheels were still on the bus. When the snow festival hit, she handed out all the scarves she made, getting every single girl's name right for once. Willem asked Nig what all the fuss was about, and he explained this was basically a good luck, don't die party for the upcoming mission. They even got some presents from Pierre, along with a congrats on being a soldier letter. Willem saw Chtholly in a new dress and couldn't help but tell her she looked like $1 million that night. The next morning, while packing up, Chtholly felt a wave of sadness realizing she'd already forgotten so much about the girls she lived with. Even on the road, some of her memories were still missing, but she was clinging to what she had left like a life raft. She knew that once they were gone, she wouldn't even know who was staring back at her in the mirror. A few hours later, they finally set foot on the surface of the planet. Noft gave Nephron a massive hug, acting like it had been decades since they last met. Chtholly stepped through the fairy door, and the other girls looked at her like she was a ghost come back to haunt them. Later, Willem helped the girls purge all the toxic magical waste that was building up in their systems. Rantolk didn't exactly trust him, given that humans were the ones who released the monsters and trashed the place. Willem admitted he was still learning about the beasts that had basically turned the surface into a giant monster mosh pit. Chtholly thought the monsters were kind of like them, but Willem shut that down fast. Monsters only care about breaking things. Rantolk still gave him the cold shoulder and walked away. Willem told the squad he was going to poke around the ruins, and Nephron decided she was going to be his shadow for the trip. Chtholly heard some noise coming from a nearby room and found a bunch of soldiers having a little party on their downtime. But she overheard them talking trash about her, wondering if she was actually doing her job or just tagging along for fun. That hit her right in the pride, leaving her feeling a nasty mix of angry and incredibly small. A few minutes later, Willem walked into Godley's tent and found him listening to Grick moan about the mission. Grick was convinced that sending a huge team underground was just a complicated way to commit group suicide. He'd seen groups this big vanish before, but Willem managed to cool everyone down before someone threw a punch. Willem started digging through the junk they'd found, but his mind kept drifting back to how the temple looked before it was a pile of rocks. He was thinking about Maria and the old crew who used to call this place home before the end of the world. When they got back to the ship a few hours later, the place was spotless thanks to Chtholly's mini army of recruits. He went to the storage bay to ask about the weapon they dug up, but the guards were useless and knew nothing. Suddenly, the whole ship started shaking like it was in a giant blender, scaring the absolute life out of everyone. Chtholly started seeing her past life as Lilia in vivid, high-definition color. She woke up in a white void where she could see elk wandering around. A girl with a giant sword stepped through a crack in the wall and said she was there to kill the elk. She said her name was Lilia, and she was doing it all for the guy she was in love with. The ghost girl attacked, and Chtholly finally snapped back to reality, gasping for breath. She told herself to hold on tight because she wasn't ready to turn into someone else just yet. Later, she made lunch for everyone, which was a big hit with the hungry crew. But some of the soldiers started gossiping about how Willem was a bit too obsessed with her, so he went back to the warehouse to avoid the drama. Meanwhile, Rantolk was reading about how humans once dragged the body of a dead god around, but the pages were too blurry to finish the story. Walking into a room where Chtholly was helping the guys patch up their gear, Rantolk was actually impressed for once by what her friend could pull off. After that, Chtholly headed to the warehouse and offered to help, shocking Willem. Apparently, she'd heard he was a big deal and just wanted to feel useful for a change. Later, Willem asked for his blades to be handed over. He took the chance to sharpen them up while they kept digging through the junk. Deep in the ruins, the crew stumbled into an uncharted area, and surprise, surprise, a massive beast decided it was lunchtime. A few hours later, Chtholly brought Willem some food. He wasn't even mad, he was actually touched and gave her a genuine thank you. He told her he'd tuned up her sword and finally found the weapon he'd been hunting for, promising she could take it for a spin once they got home. But Chtholly just looked sad, admitting she had no idea how many memories she'd already leaked out. Willem checked the sword and realized it was in mint condition, which was twisted considering it was literally built to wipe out the human race. He thought about the surface being trashed and finally started to connect the dots on what really went down. The thought of what Chtholly was going through for the other girls hit him so hard his legs gave out, and she rushed over to make sure he wasn't dying. He's a mess right now. He bounced back fast and asked her to marry him, explaining he finally figured out that having a home and a life to come back to is the only thing that matters. He promised to be her shield and give her the life she actually deserved. And honestly, Chtholly was all in, saying yes immediately because she just wanted to be with him. The next day, Chtholly was basically glowing, unable to hide her just engaged smile. Even Rantolk noticed the high-energy vibes and commented that it was actually nice to see her happy for once. Later, they went back into the ruins, avoiding eye contact like awkward teenagers, until Grick yelled for them to come check out something cool. Chtholly was staring at a plaque on the wall, but Grick explained it was a symbol of the elk forces. He reminded them of the legends where gods ruled the world and tried to erase humans in a particularly nasty war. Willem recognized one of the gods, Eben, and remembered fighting him, though he wondered what happened after the dust finally settled. When they reached the pile of rocks that used to be his house, he got a major gut punch, remembering the girls who waited for a promise he never kept. Chtholly, meanwhile, was starting to hear voices again, feeling something calling her from the dark. Then an earthquake hit, the ground split open, and a monster appeared right in the middle of the dig site. The guards tried to protect everyone, having no clue they were fighting a magical freak. Willem woke up a few seconds later, totally dazed. He didn't remember this cave being under the city, but he saw Chtholly was in the splash zone. He took off running to shield her, taking a massive hit for her. Chtholly panicked, but Grick realized they were probably in the same tunnel system where Godly's previous team vanished. He told everyone to follow the old map if they wanted to stay alive. They moved out until Grick smelled something foul. They found the shredded bodies of the first team and realized the magical beasts were way more dangerous than they thought. Chtholly started acting like a zombie, letting those voices in her head drive the car. She let her wings fly and zoomed straight for the middle of the cave like she was on a mission. At the same time, up on the surface, Nephron finally made it back to the ship. It was pure chaos. She immediately started bossing people around to organize rescue teams and save as many as she could. Everyone was just hoping Chtholly and Willem weren't already toast. When a beast showed up, Noft didn't even wait for backup. She just charged the thing like a total maniac. Willem chased Chtholly through the cave until he found her touching a massive crystal. Her hair was almost pure red now. He begged Chtholly to snap out of it, but Grick was busy staring at a wound that just appeared on the girl inside the crystal. Willem knew exactly what that mark was. That's the work of Seniorious, a move designed to turn even a god into a corpse with a single touch. If Chtholly was carrying that curse, it meant things were way worse than he ever imagined. As the cave started coming down around them, he grabbed her and ran for the exit. He begged Chtholly not to forget who he was, but his heart sank when her voice just went totally silent. A few hours later, Godly was looking at his trashed ship and realizing they were down a bunch of power cores. He knew they were going to have to ditch the place soon. Willem stayed glued to Chtholly's side, begging her to stay with him. He couldn't lose another person, not after he finally promised to be her shield. Chtholly, meanwhile, was back in that weird dream world. Lilia was standing there, telling her she was going to kill her, goddess or not. Just to protect Willem and make sure he could live a normal life, Lilia stabbed Chtholly with her sword, passing the curse along. Then Willem's mind met Chtholly's in the void and asked why she was even there. She said she wanted to talk about what happened back in the day. The three gods watching the world realized humans were going to blow everything up, so they sent an army to wipe them out. But they failed because one brave human killed the last of the invaders, which turned humanity into the beasts that ate the world. Chtholly revealed she was actually Elk, one of the visitors and the very last one to die. She said her weapon was also named Elk, and explained that fairies are just the souls of kids who don't understand death. They're basically ghost soldiers. Chtholly asked what happened next, and Elk told her the truth. Dreams don't last forever and it's time to wake up. She took her hand and told her it was time to vanish. Meanwhile, Noft and Rantolk were busy kicking beast butt and finally managed to catch a breather. Rantolk was starting to admit that Willem actually knew what he was talking about, which was a big help for the team. But then hundreds of monsters crawled out of the rocks, ending their 5-minute vacation. Noft got ready for the end, just hoping she'd get to say bye to Chtholly. One last time. Inside the ship, Nig finally got the power back on while a beast was busy shredding the walls and the crew. Nephron showed up and cut the monster down, telling everyone to get the hell out of there. She took a few hits, and the officers were in total shock at how much she was tanking. But Nig ordered the evacuation because Nephron was soaking up way too much magical poison. Willem was losing it, blaming himself for everything that went wrong, just like he did with Lilia back in the day. He hated himself for breaking his promise to Almeria, and he hated that he couldn't give Chtholly the happy ending he'd promised. He leaned in for one last kiss. Then a beast broke through the wall. He looked at her and apologized for being so angry and wanting revenge. He just wanted her to be happy. But Chtholly, with what little was left of her, just told him she wanted him to stop suffering. She saw his bloody face and started crying out his name. Willem started tearing through the monsters in the hallway. It was the only thing he had left to do after failing so hard. He was on a mission to kill every single freak he found. While the guards were failing, Nefren showed up to help, but Chtholly told them to fall back and let her handle it. Outside, Rantalk was still swinging, and Willem jumped in to save her from getting eaten. She was stunned by his moves, but wanted to know where the rest of the crew was. She figured Noft was nearby and Nefren was still on the ship. Willem was bleeding out, but insisted he had to keep moving because it was the only job he knew. Rantalk saw the bodies of the guys she couldn't save, but she decided to keep fighting so their deaths actually meant something. Willem finally woke up after a few minutes. Rantalk told him to stay down, but he wasn't listening. He called himself a legendary hero who couldn't protect a single thing, saying all he was good for was swinging a sword. He told her to stop using her blade because of the poison and started limping forward. He saw Chtholly standing there and asked her for one last favor so he could actually keep a promise for once. He warned her this move would erase her entire existence and she'd lose every feeling she ever had. But Chtholly said yes without a second thought because she just wanted him to stop hurting and give them one last moment together. Nefren was still out there fighting like her life depended on it. But a beast finally got a lucky hit in and mangled her pretty bad. She knew she was cooked, so she decided to dump all her power into one final explosion to take the monster with her. Then she just collapsed. The bridge crew warned that the engines were toast and they were about to pull a very sketchy stunt. They told everyone to brace for impact. In the cargo bay, the officers thought Nefren was about to fall out of a hole in the ship, but she just told them to relax. She said the fairy door was about to open and that this was exactly how it was supposed to end. Right on cue, Willem lunges forward, refusing to let her drift into the abyss. He manages to snag her just in time, feeling that desperate rush of relief and joy. But Nefren warns him he just made a massive mistake. The fairy door is about to blow, and if he tries to climb back up, the whole ship is going to turn into fireworks. He doesn't care though, promising he'll figure it out while he starts hauling her up with everything he's got. Nefren spots his blood and gives him a quiet thank you, reminding him he's already done enough and doesn't need to die playing the hero. For a split second, he actually loses his grip in total shock, unable to process the idea of her actually leaving him. But then, fueled by pure stubbornness and a lot of pain, he throws himself forward to shield her one last time. Inside the ship, Nefren is pinned to the floor, unable to even twitch. She watches a shadow pass by and grab her sword, and she's floored to see it's actually Chtholly standing there. Nefren tries to stop her, thinking that a world without Chtholly is a world where nobody is actually happy. Chtholly just gives a sad apology, saying she can't just stand around while Willem is out there risking his neck. Even with the world ending, she's weirdly glad to be there, doing what needs to be done. She charges toward Willem with zero hesitation, while he swears to protect her even if it's the very last thing he ever does on this planet. He tries to crank his powers up to 11 for the final stand. But Chtholly gets a supernatural boost from Elk, hitting terminal velocity to reach him and stop him from falling into the dark. Nefren is completely stunned by the display before she finally blacks out. Willem is also stuck in a state of total disbelief. He can't wrap his head around the fact that Chtholly is the one charging into a literal wall of monsters. Chtholly keeps her word and starts swinging, replaying every good memory like a highlight reel before they vanish, which only makes her hit harder. She's a total buzzsaw, shredding beasts without taking a scratch, reminding herself she was the luckiest girl ever. Willem is just a wreck on the floor, screaming for her to stop. He can only watch in total horror as the monsters finally manage to pin her down. She's surrounded in midair, but then she goes nuclear, dumping her entire life force into a massive explosion that clears the sky and deletes every monster in sight. After the dust settles, she drifts down to say her final goodbye to him. A few days later, Limeskin is holding a somber memorial for everyone who didn't make it, especially the girls who went out in a literal blaze of glory. Over at the clinic, Noft and Rantalk are busy patching up their battle scars. They're definitely feeling the empty chair where Chtholly used to be. Even Nig is watching Tiet, and the others use Chtholly's sacrifice as their new workout motivation. They're all determined to get strong enough so that never happens again. Ithia still isn't sure they can actually pull it off, while Rantolk is freaking out because she can't find a heartbeat for Willem anywhere. He's basically a flatline, which is another mystery. Suddenly, they get a visitor alert. Down by the lake, a brand new fairy pops up, radiating energy and carrying the feelings of a life she shouldn't remember. Everyone welcomes her to the party, knowing full well she's going to be a handful, and that's the end of the story.